Hey Dragons, Miss Minkus here. I am going to fill you in on the two nonfiction signposts that we're working on this week. One of them is familiar, it's contrasts and contradictions, which you have done before. And then we're learning a new signpost today, which is numbers and stats. So just as a reminder, nonfiction was designed to make us think about the world around us, and it is always written from someone's point of view, or POV. You may or may not agree with the point of view, but it is about something real and happening in the world around us. It could even be happening to us or because of us. Do more than read and accept nonfiction at face value. Form an opinion about how it affects you. So part of what Notice and Note and the signposts are about is thinking about the text we're reading and deciding what we think and feel about them. So just a reminder, these are all of the nonfiction signposts: word gaps, quoted words, numbers and stats, contracts and contradictions, extreme and absolute language. We did quoted words, we're reviewing contrasts and contradictions, and we're learning numbers and stats today. So just as a review, contrasts and contradictions. When you are reading and the author shows you a difference between what you know and what is happening in the text, or a difference between two or more things. These are some key words to look for right here. However, unlike, different from, instead, otherwise, or by contrast. So when you see contrasts and contradictions, stop and ask yourself, what's the difference and why does it matter? The answer here can help you see details that show you the main idea, compare and contrast, understand author's purpose, infer, make a generalization, or notice cause and effect. So some signal words, again, for contrast and contradiction: but, yet, opposed to, instead, on the other hand, contrary, beg to differ, even though, unlike, however, on the contrary, otherwise. So those words are all going to give you a hint that a contrast and contradiction is coming. So in your article for today, we learned about the growth mindset, and there's an example of a contrast and contradiction at the beginning in paragraph 1. Imagine that two students, O and Artie, are taking a really hard math test in September. O has a fixed mindset, which means he believes that a person's intelligence is fixed. According to O, you're either smart or dumb, and if you're smart, everything is easy for you. Artie has a growth mindset, which means he believes your intelligence can grow. Not everyone can become a genius or star athlete, but they can improve the skills they have and develop new ones. So in this text, the two mindsets are placed right next to each other to highlight the differences between them. The author uses this contrast and contradiction to show us there's a huge difference between the growth mindset and the fixed mindset. So here's an example of how I would write this in a notice and note on my handout. I have contrast and contradiction, paragraph 1. Here's the same quote that I just used. And then the author shows us O and Artie's different mindsets as examples of fixed versus growth mindsets. They're placed next to each other in the article to highlight their differences. So now we're going to learn about numbers and stats. I'm going to play this video for you, and then I'll talk to you a little bit about numbers and stats and what they look like, and I'll give you an example from the text.
Hi, today we're going to be talking about nonfiction signposts. These are signposts when you're reading nonfiction text that will help you to become a closer reader. The signpost we're going to be talking about today is numbers and stats. Numbers and stats is when an author uses specific numbers or amounts or provides statistical information, like when you notice a number and stat, you should stop and ask yourself, why did the author use these numbers or amounts? It is important to note that numbers and stats do not always need to be specific numbers or amounts. The author may use numerals and words as well as indefinite quantities such as many, most, some, taller than, etc. Let's look at an example. Gorana and her family have lived in their one-room house for 2 years. It's one of thousands of mud brick homes in the Shamshatu Afghan refugee camp. The camp hosts 50,000 Afghan refugees. I see that Gorana's house has only one room, which tells me that it is very small, and that she's lived there for 2 years, which seems like a long time to live in such a small house. I also see that her home is one of thousands in the camp and that there are 50,000 refugees living there, which tells me that there are a lot of refugees just like Garana. When we notice numbers and stats when we are reading, it is important to stop and ask ourselves, why did the author use these numbers or amounts?
Created using Powtoon. All right. So we're going to go through an example from the story of numbers and stats. But first, I'm going to recap what numbers and stats means. So numbers and stats is when the author uses specific numbers or provides statistical information like percentages. So for example, if you are reading an article about athletes, it might say like 40% of athletes, blah, 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 do something. That 40% is a number or a stat. The question to ask yourself, just like it said in the video, is why did the author use those specific numbers or amounts? And I think it's really important to remember another thing that the video said was they don't have to be specific. So words like many, most, some, taller than also count as numbers and stats. So the example I chose from the story is of a number that's not specific, but there are specific numbers in this Newsela article you can use. So in paragraph 9, there's a quote, many successful people have a growth mindset too. So the word many means like a lot. A lot of successful people have this mindset in common. So I noticed that, and then my note is going to be the author uses the number stat many to show that having a growth mindset is a trait that a lot of successful people have. So by using many, it makes you feel like, okay, successful people really embrace this mindset. If it had just said a few or some, that would be less, but many means a lot. So what you're going to be doing now is there is a handout for you to copy on your Google Classroom or Canvas, and you're going to be noticing and noting your own example of numbers and stats and your own example of contrast and contradictions, okay? Be sure to ask your teachers if you have any questions, and have a great day, Dragons. Bye.